Hello, David Spicer here with another special episode of Stage Whispers Live, which is being broadcast on the Stage Whispers Facebook page, YouTube, and the Association of Community Theatre in New South Wales Facebook page, or you're watching it on replay. And we've got a special episode which coincides with the publication of our new free online resource. It's called Let's Put On a Show, and you just flick through it and it gives you all sorts of great articles and lists about coping with COVID, about choosing a show, about costumes, about technical, about props, public relations, and it's free at stagewhispers.com.au, stage resources. It's called Let's Put On a Show, and it's there year round. And of course, to actually hear from the people putting on shows in community theatre, we've now got some special guests in 3 states of Australia. First of all, in New South Wales, welcome to Ros English. Hi, Ros, how are you?
Hi, David. Lovely to have you. Be able to talk
Ros,
to you.
Ros is the president of the Gosford Musical Society on the Central Coast and also the CEO of the Association of Community Theatre Inc. New South Wales. We've got Kimberly Shaw. Kimberly in Perth. How are you, Kimberly?
Hi, David.
Kimberly is the president of the Independent Theatre Association. She's the extraordinary correspondent for Stage Whispers magazine and a freelance director. And from Tasmania, we've got Belinda King, who is from the Encore Theatre Company, a magnificent theatre company which performs at the Princess Theatre in beautiful Launceston. And she's also a radio broadcaster there. And thank you for staying up for us, Belinda. We love you for that. How are you, Belinda?
Thank you very much. Not exactly my end of the day, but delighted to join you.
Well, look, before we get going in detail, if you could just tell me in 30 seconds or less where you're up to with putting on shows at the moment. First you, Ros.
Yes, well, we're right in the thick of it in about 6 weeks. The 4th of March, we're hoping to open 42nd Street. It'll be our first production since we shut down in March 2020 with Mamma Mia.
What about you, Belinda, in Launceston?
Well, like Ros, we shut down in March 2020 with Mamma Mia. We were lucky in Tassie that after an initial outbreak with COVID through the Ruby Princess, that we actually had 19 months of COVID-free. So we put Mamma Mia to bed before the end of last year. Now we are 6 weeks out from opening Chicago, and we've finally got COVID here. So it's all now a bit scary.
Kimberly, Perth. Oh, oasis, an oasis of COVID freedom.
Mostly, but we are coping with new regulations, which is keeping some cast members off the stage. And we are in the middle of Fringe World with a little bit of COVID in town.
Wonderful. Well, we'll come back to the full panel in a moment. But first of all, we'll take just a quick in-depth look at New South Wales. Now, Ros, oh, there we go. That's on New South Wales. There we go. We've got Ros English. Now, you're from the Gosford Musical Society, of course, and which are featured in Let's Put On a Show because of your magnificent costume collection. Well, you've got every costume under the sun.
Yes.
You've got
Penzance. Yep.
Yeah, Pirates Penzance. There's 42nd Street. You're on, and Mamma Mia, which your GMS Costumes is magnificent. Is renting sets across Australia, and of course, the Association of Community Theatre has, of course, got a magnificent public liability insurance scheme, which is available for community theatres Australia-wide and is in also in Let's Put On a Show guide. So first of all, how are you coping though? Because Ros, you're really in the thick of it in New South Wales. How dicey is it putting on a show at the moment?
Well, it's getting thicker every day, actually, David. It's really quite a scary place to be. The production team is having the most dreadful time. Each performance, we're rehearsing on Mondays and Thursdays, and before every production we end up with somebody who says, I've got COVID or I'm a close contact, I have to be away for, until I'm COVID free. We had a case of one of our people in the costume shop also had COVID, and we're just trying to operate as best we can in a COVID-free environment. We're still using hand sanitizer and checking in. The only thing we're not doing probably is taking temperatures, but we're rehearsing in masks. and just being we're not sharing suppers or anything like that we would have normally done. It's just really one rehearsal at a time, so that we can actually get through this as well as best we can. We're hoping to open on the 4th of March. I think I said that before, and it's just fraught with danger. We're opening at the Laycock Street Theatre, and we're not sure what audience ratios we're going to be faced with at the time. At the moment, we're unaware that the regulations from council are that everybody that uses the theatre has to be double vaxxed or with a booster on the way, and all of our company is double vaxxed and almost all boosted as well. So we are just in the process also of about to audition for Aladdin for our juniors. That'll be on in July, and also for School of Rock, which is going to be on in July. So 42nd Street's going to be quite the test case for us getting back into the theatre and being able to put on a production. And I really want to commend our production team and all the cast and crew, because everybody is trying so hard, and they're all very, very enthusiastic to be able to get back into the theatre.
Well, wish you all the best. I'll bring in Belinda from Encore Theatre Company, and you're one of the largest sort of community theatres in Australia, in the beautiful Princess Theatre, and you're currently in rehearsals for Chicago, Behind a Mask, and you've also got the extraordinary asset of Anthony Phillips, who, you've hit the jackpot there. He's retired, costume maker extraordinaire, and he's making you beautiful costumes which are available for hire across Australia, and also in the Let's Put On a Show guide. So you've really hit the jackpot there. Everyone needs an Anthony Phillips to retire in their suburb or small town.
I mean, Anthony did come down here for a quiet life, because he's been literally Australia's premier professional costumier for the last quarter century, doing Phantom and Priscilla and Lion King, and working on the Star Wars films that were done in Australia, and so much more, and Moulin Rouge and whatever. He retires, he comes here, and unfortunately he came and saw a show, and that was that. Once we got wind of it, he was back into the sewing room, and he's done some beautiful work for us, and those costumes are there and being utilised by a number of groups now, which is wonderful. And it's a fabulous collection of his costumes that will actually now stay together, which is terrific.
That's right, which I was lucky enough to see at the Australian Musical Theatre Festival, which is in Launceston, the musical theatre capital of Australia, the world, and it's going to be back on again in May. So tell me, how dicey is it for you putting on a show at the moment in Tasmania?
Well, we had the terrible situation in March 2020 when everything collapsed. We finally got back to theatre with Mamma Mia in October last year, and fortunately managed to recoup virtually all of our losses. So back on track now. We're doing Chicago in March, but since Mamma Mia was on in October, we've opened our borders, and so now we actually have this thing here called COVID. So it's a hand sanitizer, it's the check-ins, face masks at rehearsals. There's an exemption for rehearsals that we don't need to use the masks all the time, but because we've got people in our team who've got friends and relatives who are immunocompromised, the entire company's decided that yes, we should rehearse under masks and make sure that we can be as safe as possible. The biggest threat at this stage, well, two big threats: ticket sales. When the borders opened, ticket sales for everyone just stopped over Christmas, New Year. Fortunately, they're bouncing back now very slowly. And then the second big threat for us, besides making sure we can find an audience, will actually be in theatre. And if we lose, in particular, one of our leads, one of our 6 major leads, that's going to be an enormous problem for us, because they're hugely talented people, and quite frankly, terribly difficult for us to find suitable understudies on our little island of 550,000 people.
Well, absolutely, and I've got Kimberly Shaw in Perth there, and we'll get onto the issue of understudies, but shortly, because that is just, amateur theatre, community theatre, usually doesn't have understudies. But so we'll get onto that discussion shortly. But Kimberly, you're in Perth, so tell us what's it. I mean, you of course wrote a great article in our Let's Put on a Show publication and for the website and the print magazine, because you had you did this director's diary for Into the Woods, where you had a flood, this incredible flood, which and then but it all worked out. You managed to get on a wonderful award-winning production of Into the Woods, but your production was I think was tripped up because of one case of COVID.
One case of COVID, and we went to masks and shut down, and which was good because we've had 6 months, of course, free from it since then. But yes, we went to masks. We had a production week basically was a shutdown week. So we were really limited. We could have 20 people in the building and there's 18 in the cast. So it was a tricky week, but we managed to get it on. The first couple of performances, we had masked audience, and then we went back to no restrictions. At the moment in WA, we have some new regulations have come in. So you must be fully vaxxed to perform or even to go to the theatre after January 31. So some of our theatre companies have suddenly had to replace actors because they're not fully vaxxed and won't be fully vaxxed by the 31st of January. So that's been a huge challenge to some of our theatre companies. And and for all the companies to learn how to check vaccination records and things is a challenge, because everybody who goes to the theatre in WA after the 31st has to be fully vaccinated.
Right, so that's very strict, but also that you're not opening the borders anymore on February the 5th. So that's a bit of relief for the theatre community, I would imagine.
It is for the theatre community, absolutely, yeah.
So let's bring back in Belinda in Launceston and Ros English in on the central in Terrigal on the Central Coast, God's own country. Everyone's in
Saratoga.
Saratoga. Everyone's in God's own country. Now, so this issue of understudies in community theatre, because it's not something that is done very thoroughly, generally speaking, is it? I mean, it's not as though your life depends on having understudies. It's that there's the tradition of the show must go on, and people going on with the sniffles. Now, how firstly, Ros, on the Central Coast, how are you managing that issue of understudies?
Well, it's not terribly foreign to us. When we did Shout, for example, with such a big, massive part of Johnny O'Keefe, we double cast it. And so that each fellow who was a Johnny O'Keefe, played the Johnny O'Keefe role, had an opportunity to do an equal number of shows. So we have done it from time to time, but right now, our production team for 42nd Street has just finished casting understudies for 42nd Street. And of course that brings up all the issues of costumes and additional costumes, and unless you can cast somebody who's exactly the same size, which in community theatre is probably not going to happen. So Belinda, you're talking about understudies and the fact that you're in Launceston, and so you don't have a huge talent pool. You don't have you've got great talent, but it's a narrow pool. How do you cope?
Indeed, we are looking at how we can best protect our 6 leading performers, because the reality is to find people that can replace them at a standard that we're going to be happy with, and that I think our audiences will expect really, really difficult. So we're looking further afield as to other people that may have recently or semi-recently played the roles as being potential backups. We are looking within the cast. We are looking within a couple of members of the production team that could cover maybe 1 or 2 of the roles. But quite honestly, if we lost a Roxy or a Velma come showtime, there will be performances that will have to be postponed or cancelled.
What about you in Perth, Kimberly? Are you having to take the issue of understudies more seriously?
We hadn't needed them up till now, although because of the restrictions that come in on the 31st, one of our theatre companies, Limelight, Runaway Repertory, they were supposed to open The Woman Who Cooked Her Husband on the 27th of January. It's
The Woman Who Cooked Her Husband?
Yeah. You haven't heard of that one? It's quite very popular. Anyway, only 3 people in it, the wife, the husband, and the girlfriend. And they lost one. She's not vaccinated, and she can't be fully vaccinated by the 31st and doesn't want to be anyway. And so they've replaced her with someone who's done the show recently from another company. They have to open late because of the woman being involved in a fringe show, but it will go on. So, yeah, I guess it's borrowed from other companies. The show I'm about to do, though, has never been done in Perth, though, so that's not an option for me.
At what point is it too hard to put on theatre? I mean, are you what do you think, Ros?
Well, that's a matter. We're actually having a strategic planning weekend coming up on Saturday and Sunday, and that's going to be one of the things that we'll have to look at. We have to take into account what's our break-even point. We budget normally on 75% occupancy, so it's going to depend very much on audiences and what, how they respond and how quickly they respond. We're just under 50% sold at the moment for 42nd Street, and that's without any audience restrictions in terms of any spatial restrictions. But it's actually going to come down to dollars and cents, I think, because we just have to make sure that we don't go under. I mean, we've lost $175,000 over the last 2 years, and we've still had to pay all our insurance and that sort of stuff. So it's going to come down to dollars and cents, and we have to look at that in a very serious light over the weekend.
Belinda, your company in Launceston got a grant from the federal government under RISE to put on Mamma Mia. So that's almost unheard of for the federal government to fund an amateur theatre production of Mamma Mia.
We were one of the, I think we're possibly the only amateur theatre company in Australia that actually was given a grant under RISE funding. And we were also lucky enough to receive a grant through Arts Tasmania, a state government grant as well, to help us get back on stage, which was, Ros, I absolutely sympathise with you. When our production went down in March 2020, the losses came to $180,000, and it could have absolutely spelt the end of the company. So those grants truly helped us get up and running again and finally getting the show back on stage. It was an enormous success and a bigger success than we ever anticipated. So the audiences and the desire to attend most certainly was there. But what we've seen now since then with the borders reopening, our tickets initially really took off for Chicago, but across Christmas, New Year, when those borders reopened and the cases of COVID, the inevitable cases got in, we saw tickets really slow up to an absolute, less than a trickle for about 10 days. Now they have bounced back. They have just started to bounce back, but there were 2 key areas in particular. We had a bit of a council of war as to whether we proceed or not, but the 2 key areas for us are one around our capacity to break even. So we've looked at it and we've done our number crunching, and we think we're going to be able to get there on the current sales patterns. And then 2, the big issue once we're in theatre as to whether or not there is cases within the cast, and we do need to actually take some nights off, or heaven forbid, longer than 1 or 2 nights. So some big challenges, and it's a case of we're going ahead at the moment, but we've given ourselves a couple of kill dates to withdraw from the production, or at least postpone it. But once we move into theatre, come hell or high water, we're going ahead.
Yes, good. Yeah. So
yes. Well, I mean, professional theatres had a very rough time in the recent weeks. Frozen lost a couple of weeks. Hamilton lost a week. The Wedding Singer lost a week. Come From Away. So it's just impossible. Once one person gets it in the cast during rehearsal, it just spreads. Opera Australia had terrible problems. I mean, the best thing that can happen, of course, is that everybody gets it mildly, but that everybody in the cast gets it at once. I mean, that's what you really, very mildly. So you, what about in Perth, Kimberly? Because you're saying that it's a mad scramble to get shows on when there's a break, when the coast appears clear.
Yeah, certainly last year that was a quick make hay while the sun shines, because we felt that at any moment a truck driver with COVID would cross the border and we would all be gone, like New South Wales. And so I think that has been a rush. With COVID in town at the moment, it's always in the back of your mind, and I think actors more than anyone are checking that exposure list every day to see whether it's taking them down. I know that the Fringe show community, because there's a huge overlap between community theatre and the Fringe world shows, and actors anxiously checking every day to make sure that they've not been put on furlough, so to speak, waiting to make sure their shows can go on. It's hard.
Yes. Now, I mean, I've noticed in my sort of wearing my hats as a licensor of shows that, theatre companies little companies are folding. They are. They're just sort of saying, "Oh, that's it. We can't go on anymore." So there is long-term collateral damage. But I mean, a few months ago, it was when the coast appeared clear. When we were on top of things, theatre was booming for a while. You just sort of absolutely booming. You couldn't, it was a terrific time for theatre. So how do you think that the theatre any ideas on where theatre's going post-COVID? Any ideas? Is it just going to be business as usual, or is it going to be different?
I think if I can sort of say a few words, we're waiting to hear from our theatre, the Laycock Street Community Theatre, waiting to hear from Council about what they're going to do, or if they're going to impose any further instructions or any further...
Who's that?
Sorry, I'll just finish that, sorry.
This is live. This is Stage Whispers TV live, and we're going to play our theme. There we go. Oh, there's the phone. The phone again. I thought I was going to fix it with my little stick. So Ros says she's waiting to hear. What do you think, Belinda? Is it just going to be business as usual, or is it going to be different in the future?
We've had a really unique situation, I think, develop here when COVID was theoretically at its peak, but there still weren't any cases in Tasmania. One of our local councillors in Launceston, who is married to a local company president here, had an idea about an insurance scheme that he took to our company and to Theatre North that run the Princess Theatre, and we fashioned it in something to put to the state government, and they took it up. What they created was an insurance scheme with a pool of $1 million, and you could actually apply to be covered under that scheme against the potential that government mandated shutdowns or reductions in audience would affect your box office. So up to $100,000 per production. So we had Mamma Mia in the theatre, and if we had to shut down for several performances, we had the potential of being covered for those losses of that particular performance. And then if we didn't need to tap into those funds, when our production ended, the money that had been potentially earmarked for us goes back into the pool and is there for the next company to be covered. Now that scheme's been extended at the moment, and the state government here are luckily looking at how they can actually modify it to allow for the fact that it is very difficult to get understudies and pull other people in. And there was a 3-day shutdown in Hobart late last year, and many companies in Hobart, as a result of that 3-day shutdown, did lose performances, and they did get covered under that scheme, and there were dollars incoming, and it was just a wonderful little security blanket that just simply wasn't available anywhere else. So hopefully that will continue. The government did actually take time and give us the time of day to listen, and it's covered professional and amateur community theatre as well.
That's great. So that's in Tasmania. There's $1 million fund. There's a scheme in Victoria covering COVID cancellations, but they've got to actually be legislated to shut.
Yes.
And because the state governments are saying we're pressing on, they don't get any money in Victoria. There's nothing in New South Wales to that effect, and Western Australia, well, you're going to keep COVID.
There was one here. We were seriously considering taking it out for our big awards night, but we moved venues to one that was more ticket safe and that we wouldn't have huge ticketing fees if we cancelled. And we thought, leave it for someone else that needs it more. So, yeah.
Right. So that was the Independent Theatre Association Community Theatre Awards of Community Theatre across Western Australia. The Finley Awards. Lovely. Ah, wonderful. Well, look, thank you everybody for joining us. Of course, this discussion was marked by, coincided with the release of Let's Put On a Show, our Stage Whispers Theatre Resources online annual publication, which you can see on the website, and you can about putting on a show, costumes, sound, light, coping with COVID, all sorts of things. And of course, the latest edition of the magazine is a cracker. Kimberly's probably written half of it because she goes to every show in Perth. She doesn't sleep.
Off to Wayne, half an hour.
Oh, that's right, half an hour. What show are you going in half an hour?
I am going to, she says, something Lonely Planet, and then 4x4x4, and then Naughty Nights at 9, 3 to 9.
Well, that's right. She's going to 3 shows in the next 10 minutes. So of course she can't remember all the names of them. And Belinda, thank you, Chookers, for your production of Chicago, which I'm going to dial up the picture. Oh, we were rocking. Oh, that's right. You did a fantastic
if you want to do that.
Oh, fantastic production.
Can I say that the rights companies, yourself and the other couple of major rights companies in Australia, have actually been sensational in the last few years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
looking after everyone.
Yeah, yes, I couldn't agree more. The support's been really good. Our biggest issue has been we were trying to put Mamma Mia on again in at the end of last year, and the theatre just wouldn't give us any information at all. We would have had to go somewhere else and all that sort of stuff. So, but the rights people we have been absolutely fabulous with transferring rights, with transferring deposits, and it must have been a nightmare for them, but they've done really well. I think. Good point, Belinda. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a checkbook here, which has got full of refund checks.
Refund.
I've just got because the community theatre schools like getting checks still, but so all right, that's good. We hope to see you all in a crowded, safe theatre very soon. Thank you for joining Stage Whispers TV Live. We had Kimberly Shaw in Western Australia from Stage Whispers and the Independent Theatre Association. Fantastic director, Roz English, Association of Community Theatre and GMS Costumes, and Belinda King, broadcaster who's been up since 1 o'clock in the morning and looking fabulous, and guru of the Encore Theatre Company. And I'm David Spicer. Hope to see you in a crowded but safe theatre soon.
Thank you, David. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.